Welcome to Nothing Without Us, stories and discussions about meaningful inclusion. We will talk about accessibility, true inclusion, and disability justice with stories, policy updates, discussions, and related commentary on the value of being accessible and inclusive. We believe life should be accessible for everyone, and everyone should be included in all aspects of life. I am your host, Annette Bourbonniere. I am a 70-ish-year-old woman with short gray hair and eyeglasses. I am sitting in a power wheelchair, and my service dog Kirby could show himself at some point during the podcast. This podcast is captioned. Please press the subscribe button at any time during the podcast if you have not already done so. It will not cost you anything, but it will help us make this podcast grow. You are also welcome to make comments in the chat and to give us feedback about what you do or do not like. We especially appreciate a thumbs up. Today we are going to be discussing Crip the Vote. It was a movement that began in 2016, started by 3 disability activists, Alice Wong, Greg Baratin, and Andrew Pulrang, who were aware that disability is never on the radar for our lawmakers and policymakers. Do you ever hear disability mentioned during campaign speeches? I can't say that I ever have. In our last gubernatorial campaign in Rhode Island, I tried bringing up the question to some candidates. Only one candidate responded, and that response was essentially, "I'll have to get back to you on that." This year, our election is really important. On the federal level, our entire democracy is at stake. I don't know of anyone that can say Congress did anything at all this past year. Our Supreme Court is in shambles. In the state of Rhode Island, we lack public transportation, decent roads and bridges, inclusive education, and basically accessible cities. At the same time, because we do not have an Olmstead plan, our health and human services are, well, let's just say less than helpful. I believe we live in very scary times, made all the worse if you're a member of the disability community. Since I personally don't like feeling helpless, I have decided that this podcast will run a sub-series that will carry on the intent of Crip the Vote until the 2024 election. We will invite current lawmakers and candidates to talk about disability issues. This sub-series will talk about disability issues, policies, etc., and involve these lawmakers and candidates in discussions about how we can create change, or rather how they can help create change. We will use this sub-series to highlight what is wrong and to talk about solutions that would work for people with disabilities. While we will start with Rhode Island lawmakers and Rhode Island candidates for office, we will not limit ourselves to that. There are some lawmakers who are doing some interesting work, and we need to talk about that. And I will be inviting others to join us. I can tell you that as of today, and I haven't sent out a lot of formal requests, the 2 specific people I've reached out to, one current legislator and one current candidate for the legislature, have already accepted and agreed to do this podcast. I encourage anyone who has specific questions you would like to see addressed about disability issues to either post those issues in the comments or send them to my email, annette@access-include.com. You may have questions about access to health care, access to government services, the Department of Human Services, Medicaid, employment policy, housing, transportation, Olmstead plan, etc. Likewise, please feel free to name any lawmaker or candidate that you think should be brought in on this particular series. Who do you want to hear from? What do you want addressed by them? We can make this happen. Let's make our voices heard before the election And then, by all means, go out and vote. Or vote by mail. If that option is open to you, just vote. Thank you. This is Annette Bourbonniere from Nothing Without Us, Stories and Discussions of Meaningful Inclusion. Please join us for our next episode.